Cleveland! This is for you!
Here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm Allie Heisong, coming at you live from Sneads Ferry, North Carolina, and joined with me, as always, out in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio, we've got Dustin with a beautiful hat on his head. What's going on?
Well, I just, tomorrow's the draft, heading up to Detroit, Michigan, to take on the draft and all the festivities there. And I was like, man, is this stuff going to get in here on time? UPS. They delivered today. So I got the nice sweatshirt. By the way, these are nice if you guys want to order them. The 2-1 fit hats also are the new style for our hats. Allie, you'll have to get you some of this swag. It's pretty comfy. It's actually high quality. So you're getting good stuff too. You don't know until you order it, right? How good it is. You see the design. You don't know if it's going to be good, bad, or indifferent, but very high quality, very nice stuff. And so it'll be excited to wear that around Detroit over the next few days as I head up to the draft.
The draft starts tomorrow, and I'm like a kid on Christmas. I'm so excited. The Browns don't hold a first-round pick, but you never know what's going to happen on draft night. And later on in the program, we're going to have some fun with it, give our predictions for draft night, what we expect, maybe some crazy things. So I'm really excited for that. It's just a lot of fun. And of course, you get to add a handful of new players to your roster. Your Cleveland Browns are going to get better over the next couple of days. Dustin, are you frozen? Did we lose you? All right, I think we lost Dustin there. But regardless of who they get, at what position, and what the value is, and what happens, your Cleveland Browns are going to get better over the next couple of days. So it's going to be interesting to see what route they go. A couple things to keep in mind when it comes to the draft and the Cleveland Browns. They're drafting guardrails. Andrew Berry, this front office, has been very strict in their drafting process and their guardrails. And just a reminder of what those are. They like to draft young players that they can see get to a second contract before really, the age of 25, 26 years old. So very young. They like to draft players that are typically pretty young. Big time production at big time programs. So that's just something to keep in mind that Andrew Berry likes in his draft prospects. So that does not mean that they won't go off of that, but that is traditionally who they've been under Andrew Berry. So Dustin, you're headed to Detroit. What's your plan? What are you looking forward to? You excited?
Well, tomorrow will be kind of just, I think, a day of taking it all in. Here's the truth. I have never spent any time. David will.
Uh-oh, lost Dustin again. Dustin, we're losing you.
Oh, are you there?
Yeah, you're frozen.
Yeah, I can see you. Can you see me?
I can see you and I can hear you now.
Okay. I grew up in a Ford family, so I'm excited to take in the Ford Museum and take in the festivities in Detroit. I've never been up there. And just kind of actually, since the Browns don't have a pick on the day one.
All right, Dustin, I'm going to go. Dustin, I don't know if it's your Wi-Fi or what's going on, but we're having an issue with your connectivity tonight.
Okay. Do you want me to sign off and try to come back on real quick? Go ahead.
Yeah, hop on your hotspot or something.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right, I'm gonna kick Dustin off for a minute. So Dustin, give me a thumbs up when you're good to go. I can see you down there in the waiting room. So just shoot me a thumbs up whenever you get a chance. But Dustin's headed to the draft. He's headed to Detroit for the first time. If you've never been to the draft, if you are going or you're planning on going, prepare for craziness. However, it is a very family-friendly, fun environment. I think, was it Dustin last year when you went to the draft? Is that when you hurt your shoulder? Might have been actually. So they've got plenty going on. A lot of fanfare. Sometimes you get to meet players. You get to just be up in the action. When we were there in Cleveland a few years ago, we got to see Joe Thomas there. Adam Schefter was right in front of us. So a lot of really cool things that you get to do. So if you don't mind, everybody, as we prepare to talk about the draft tonight, and we're going to go through the prospects, we're going to go through who our guys are, so give some predictions. We're going to have some really cool draft content over the next hour. If you don't mind, drop a comment, drop a question. If you have any questions, comments, concerns as it pertains to the Cleveland Browns and the draft, drop it here. Before we welcome Dustin back on, just a quick word from our friends over at Circle K.
Approval only.
Circle K's new free Inner Circle membership program is all about making it easy to reward you with the things you'll love. Sign up and save 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. Plus, get every 6th free on a tasty selection of Circle K products. We're talking piping hot pizza, fresh coffee, ice-cold fountain drinks, and more. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details.
All right, let's bring him back on. Dustin, how's it going? You back? You better? You living?
I hope so.
All right, you sound good. So we were talking about you going to Detroit. Let's get back to that.
Yeah. So taking in, like I said, never been to Detroit, I think once in my entire life. So I'm going to go up there Thursday, taking advantage of the Browns not having to pick on day one, take in the Ford Museum and take in all the festivities that, the Fan Fest. Like you were saying, it's a very family-friendly event. It's free to the public to go to. So that's the excitement part, right? You get to go in and do all these free things and enjoy. And also my company, Odyssey, that I work for, 92.3 The Fan, they actually have all 4 of the teams up there. So they're doing a lot of stuff on site with the actual, activation of the NFL draft. So it's gonna be a lot of fun to just take in all that wonderful stuff. And I'm looking forward to actually hanging out in Detroit more than, like I've never been there like for a day or 2 or 3 to partake in the city and all the things that it has to offer.
It's fun. You're gonna have a good weekend. It's a lot of fun. And what was I right? Was it last year at the draft when you hurt your shoulder when you were running
No,
the
that would be
40
no,
draft?
no,
What
no.
was
The thing that still acts up and I feel to this day happened at training camp for the Cleveland
that? Oh,
Browns,
that's right.
where I
That's right.
decided to run in a pair of Vans. Stupid. Don't ever do that. And race an 8-year-old kid. Dumb. All the way around. Dumb idea.
Did you
And
did you lose?
I was about to win until I DT'd my head into the grass. Oh man. And then the fact that Larry's recording the whole thing doesn't help. So not only does it go viral, he's sitting there recording it live as it happens. I'm like, no, that was meant to happen, And then the kid, of course, before I start racing, looks at me and goes, I'm gonna beat you. I'm like, of course, you're gonna be a smart ass kid too on top of it. So it's great.
Oh,
So
that's fun.
by the way, that same kid, long story short, I got to hang out with them all at the Guardians game. We got to get into that here in a moment, but I went to the Guardians game Friday night, partaked in that. Our Cleveland Guardians have the best record in all of Major League Baseball, best
Mhm.
record in baseball, with a tenth of the salary of some of these other teams out there. So they're best start ever for this franchise
Yeah.
with the Guardians. It's exciting to go watch these guys play, and this the new manager. It's
And how about
exciting stuff.
just a little pivot, but another Cleveland shout out here. The Cleveland Cavaliers come away with a
2 and
win
0. 2-0.
over the Orlando Magic. So yeah, this is fun. This is fun. A lot to talk about tonight. Things are going
Yeah.
well in Cleveland. So we're gonna get into it tonight with some draft talk. But before we do that, just 2 pieces of noteworthy news coming out of Cincinnati. I've said for the past couple of weeks, really, I don't know, it just seems like the Magic's a little, speaking of Magic, the Magic's just gone out of Cincinnati, and I don't really know why. I don't know what my feeling is or what it's based off of, but it just feels different down there since they paid Joe Burrow. And that's kind of coming a little bit to fruition. We can see some turmoil down there. Trey Hendrickson, their star pass rusher, officially asked for a trade. I think that kind of came out of nowhere. I'm not plugged into the Cincinnati beat, so I don't really know, but like on a national scale was pretty surprising. And also T. Higgins formally and officially requested a trade. So you can
Well,
see kind of the wheels coming off there.
yeah, I will say, I'm in Ohio, and here's kind of what's come out of all of that, just from the ears that I'm around, that Cincinnati doesn't want to pay their players. They won't pay them, and it's turning into a team that will only pay for like a Joe Burrow, right? And those guys that they want to pay, and they won't pay. I mean, we saw some of their defensive guys walk this offseason in free agency. I just don't think they are an organization, maybe because they feel like they can't, or in a place where they're not paying their players. Like, I mean,
Well, they
like
never
Cleveland.
have. Yeah, they never have. They've never been
Yeah.
like, one thing about this Cleveland Browns front office, and whether you like it or not, I think we can all agree, like Jimmy and Dee Haslam, they pay their players. Andrew Berry, they make sure that they get these deals done.
Yes.
I mean, for better for
Yeah.
worse, we've seen the good and the bad, the ugly. But one thing you
Right.
cannot say about the Cleveland Browns is they're not going to pay their players. Now,
Right.
Cincinnati, that's a different story. They are not as likely to give out big extensions and contracts to their players, which
Right.
raises a concern, especially when you pay Joe Burrow. How are you going to pay for Jamar Chase? How are you going to be able to manage T. Higgins? Obviously, you can't. So I think some of this is going to actually bleed into tomorrow night. I think we could actually see some players being dealt as soon as tomorrow night on some draft day trades. I think I don't know why, and again, I have no basis for this, but just my gut feeling is we might see at least 1 to 2 players drafted, or excuse me, obviously we'll see 1 to 2 players drafted tomorrow, 1 to 2 players traded tomorrow on draft night.
Hey, watch the Minnesota Vikings when they go on the board tomorrow night.
Yes.
That will be the spot to watch, is what the Minnesota Vikings look to do with what they have there. That should be a very interesting time there.
Yeah. All right, let's go out. And first and foremost, we're going to have a quick word from our friends over at Lorello Vineyards, and we're going to go out on the hotline, bring on Dr. David Ellery for the Medical Minute. And this is brought to you by our friends over at Lorello Vineyards.
Everybody, my name's Kim Lorello, and my husband and I, Larry, started Lorello Vineyards over 21 years ago. We're a small cantina nestled in the Grand River Valley in Geneva, Ohio. Our winery consists of 2 beautiful tasting rooms, and we have 2 rooms that can transform into party rooms inside. Our menu here at Lorello's is home cooking. We have wood-fired Tuscan pizzas, paninis, salads, and several appetizers. We have award-winning wines that have won medals internationally, nationally, and locally. In the summer and springtime, we have a beautiful outdoor patio that also we have live entertainment. We also have entertainment sporadically through the entire year inside during our cool fall and winter months. Additionally, outside in the summer, we have a beautiful tent that can house several guests for a private function. We hope to see you soon, and if you want any more information on Lorello Vineyards, you can go to our website at www.lorellovineyards.com. We hope to see you soon.
All right, and with that, let's go on and bring on Dr. David Ellery to the program. David, what's going on?
Hello, Allie and Dustin. How are we tonight?
We're doing well. How you feeling that your favorite sports team gets to host the NFL draft? They are the shining light over the next 3 days.
I think it's pretty cool. It's great for the city. Certainly, they've put on their best outfit and their best face for the draft. I've seen pictures from around the city, and there's new street signs directing you to certain landmarks that have never existed in the city of Detroit. And so, they're going to dress up when visitors come to town, and that's totally fine because it's going to be a very good influx of just, cash for the city. It's going to do them some wonders. And the Lions have already done that on their own. I don't know if you guys saw, but one interesting note is that Dan Campbell has said, if our guy is not available in the first round, I will trade down. And the Lions may not get a pick in the first round. So the fans are not going to be very happy with that. But I've also heard that when Caleb Williams goes number 1 overall to the Bears, there will be a raucous Jared Goff chant that erupts from the crowd. So be on the lookout.
Oh boy. It's fun.
I can see that.
When we went to the draft in Cleveland, that was when the Browns drafted Greg Newsome, and I think all of us were we saw JOK on the board, right? And we knew he was falling, and we were all
getting excited.
Let's get JOK right here. I think it was like number 21 overall. Like, let's get him. And then they didn't. And we were all like, okay, that's still exciting. We get Greg Newsome. And then to be able to get JOK in the second round, I think Cleveland was doing backflips. But I'll never forget it. Just because anytime like the Steelers would get up to make a pick or any of the rivals would get up to make a pick, that place would absolutely erupt with just chants and things like that. So that's a lot of fun. Dustin has never been to Detroit. David, what's the name of that delicious restaurant we went to?
The French restaurant we went to?
Yes.
Oh, man. It is going to escape me right now. It was downtown it was on Washington, right next to my old apartment where I live downtown. And it was phenomenal. It was called Le Supreme. It's in the book tower,
The book
Lake
tower. Okay.
Supreme.
You,
And
you get time, you
it
gotta go.
was, Dustin, it's an extraordinary experience. I don't know if you've ever really taken the time to enjoy French food, but it
I have
was
not.
phenomenal. From
It
top
changed
to
my life.
bottom, start to finish, really, really good experience. And there's something on the menu for everybody. There really
Mhm.
is.
Yep,
Nice.
definitely.
I was gonna say, Allie, one of my favorite pictures of all time that I got of you was at the NFL draft after you severely and underwhelmingly dressed, not
Yeah.
appropriate for the
Oh,
pouring of
no.
rain,
Mhm.
and Allie goes and buys, like, I'm not even making this up, like $150 worth of warm
It was
clothes.
a $180 hoodie that I
Yeah.
bought.
And so
Had
no
to.
joke,
I can go get it right now.
Look
It's
at
still in the closet.
David's like, what? And so the best picture is, and you'll think this is hilarious, David. She is soaking wet, clearly, right? It's not, it's kind of miserable outside. And I said, stop. I got to get a picture of you. You don't have, I mean, you look frustrated with the cold and everything.
I was.
And she looks, and behind her is a John Elway jersey. And it's the best picture I get because she's like this to like, really, this guy? And like, so it was the best because it was John Elway, who we all love to hate because of what he did to the Cleveland Browns. But it was
Yep.
something because the rain was coming down
It
in
was
buckets,
disgusting.
and
It was
it was
absolutely,
windy
yeah.
and it was cold. And then I'm like, now I get it. I've been here in April. It can be
Yeah.
70 or 40 in a matter of
Yep.
48 hours.
Well,
So
you know what? That
yeah,
was a really good weekend for me because 2 days prior is when I got Birdie, and now
that's true.
now she's just right over here being crazy. But let's get into it. Oh, is she right there, David?
She's sleeping.
She's sleeping. Don't wake her up.
Let's keep it that way.
Crazy. Don't wake her up. So a lot can happen on draft night. We have seen some crazy things happen, such as Laramie Tunsil with the mask on. He falls. We've seen some crazy things in terms of just injuries causing players to fall. I mean, Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa, he fell. There's plenty of things that can cause a player to fall. So I want to talk about injuries before the draft and what that can do to a player's draft stock. Last year or 2 years ago when the Lions drafted Jameson Williams, he had gotten injured just a few games prior in the Alabama postseason. I think it was an ACL if I'm not mistaken. And then obviously the Lions saw the talent that was there. They took a first round flyer on him. They still got him. Obviously he's producing. But there's plenty of these instances that happen where a player gets injured and has a pretty serious injury right before the draft. And I just want to talk about how that translates and what that can mean for the player's draft stock.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as you alluded to, you're taking a risk on a player, especially when they got injured in their final season of college football and cannot perform or participate in combine, pro day, et cetera, which we'll get into a little bit more too. So yeah, someone like Jameson Williams. You can also think of Hendon Hooker, another Lions draftee.
Mm-hmm.
But these players who are injured, who you hope produce, and now you see Jameson Williams running an end around, scoring the first touchdown of the game against the 49ers in the AFC Championship. So it can pay off in the right circumstance. But so one thing real quick before I get into that, I just kind of a medical update, I guess, for the NFL. They actually had their first summit back in February. I did not know this, but it was officially the NFL's first medical summit. It was at the same time when the owners and managers were meeting. And essentially they focused on injury prevention. It's the first really medical summit in any major sport in America that's kind of occurred. And they looked at player prevention. And I think coming out of that was the new rule about no more hip drop tackles. We saw that come out recently. They quoted that in the 2023 season that was used 230 times, and 15 players ended up missing time with the injury, so they felt like it was important enough to ban that. Otherwise, it was just a congregation of over 400 trainers, equipment managers, strength and conditioning coaches, nutrition experts, and sports science directors looking at injury prevention. Tendon health was a really big topic. And they plan to make it an annual event moving forward. Really, they focused on, like I said, tendon health, injury prevention, and they actually developed 8 new position-specific helmets for quarterbacks and linemen to track concussions. And so kind of a cool little tidbit that I didn't really pick up on until just today when I was doing a little bit of research, and something to look forward to every year, I think. And we may see more and more rule changes come as a result of this summit. So that was just a little kind of update for NFL news.
David, question on that. I know you mentioned medical professionals. Were team doctors at this summit as well?
So I would imagine that there were. The article I read actually did not specifically say that team physicians were there, but I also found that there is the NFL. There's actually an organization specifically for NFL team physicians that I found that has a website that I'm going to do a little bit more digging into, and maybe some more off-season talk we can get into.
Okay.
But that was just a quick aside. So getting into injuries and how that affects people's draft stock. So like Ali mentioned, Jameson Williams. Another thing we can think of this year, I think specifically more relevant, would be Kool-Aid McKinstry. Big target for the Lions potentially. And he, during the combine, was found to have a fracture of his fifth metatarsal in his foot. He ended up actually undergoing surgery for that. And so while that is not nearly as significant as an ACL tear, it's still an injury. And it's still something to consider when we are looking at drafting players and if it's going to affect them in their rookie year or in their career. And so, just some specific examples I found here on an article from SI.com. They talked about two players in particular. It is Michael Penix Jr. and then also Latu. Latu? Is that how you say that?
Yeah,
I'm probably chopping that. But so interestingly, and I want to pose a question at the end of this for the both of you. So Latu signed with Washington in 2019 and played 12 games as a true freshman. Really big prospect, had a great season. But during a preseason workout before 2020, he injured his neck and ended up having to have surgery to fuse a couple of his cervical spine vertebrae. After that, he had, I think, 5 different specialists across the country give him a prognosis, and all 5 of them said he will never play again and it's not safe for him to play. And so Washington refused to clear him. They said, you can't play, you're going to have to medically retire. In 2021, though, he went after a opinion from Dr. Robert Watkins, who performed surgery on Peyton Manning, Donnell Hunter, and Rob Gronkowski. So he has done all the high-level back surgeries. And after doing 3 hours of testing, Watkins cleared him to play football. Washington still refused to let him play. And so that's when he transferred to UCLA in 2022 and played his final 2 seasons at UCLA and was 2-time first-team All-Pac-12, 23.5 sacks, 36.5 tackles for the Bruins, and Defensive Player of the Year and a first-team All-American last year for UCLA. He was their first ever winner of the Lombardi and Ted Hendricks Awards, and he played every game since he got to UCLA. So that's example number 1. Example number 2 is Michael Penix. As we know, he started his career in Indiana. He never finished the season there. He had an ACL tear. He dislocated his SC joint. He retore his ACL, and then he dislocated his shoulder. So 4 years in a row, just devastated by injuries at Indiana. Transferred to Washington following his coach, Kalen DeBoer. From then on out, started every single game he played in. Never got injured again to miss a game in Washington. And as you know, was runner-up for the Heisman. And that's the highest the Huskies ever finished. So here's 2 examples of players who started out very promising careers, got injured for Michael Penix multiple times, and for Latu just one time, but he had neck surgery, pretty big deal. And ultimately, they both finished their careers without injuries. So, Dustin, you're on the clock. Let's say you're picking at number 36. Michael Penix Jr. is available, and you need a quarterback. Do you risk it, or are you going to pass on him?
For me, I risk it. And the reason I risk it is because these players are young. This isn't somebody having one of these injuries older in life, 30s or 40s. And I just think the body is in a much better position for healing. Like you said, he had multiple injuries at Indiana, goes to Washington, and then doesn't have another injury. I think youth has a lot to do with just injuries in people in general, and we can get into that debate. But I think as you get older, it takes longer to rehab, all those things. So, yeah, I would take the risk if he was the best available quarterback on the board, because I do think he has quite a bit of upside as a quarterback. Living out west, I watched a lot of University of Washington football. I'm kind of high on the guy. I think he's one of those guys that may very well easily translate to the NFL game, just based on the style of offense he played in. So, yes, I would take that risk, and I would take him.
Okay. What about you, Allie?
Yeah. I think it depends on how much of a need you have, right? Like if you have somebody, just trying to think of an example here. Let's just say you are the I got nothing. Oakland, the Vegas Raiders, right? They've got Aiden O'Connell, who was decent enough, right? But you still need a quarterback, and maybe you're not in a position to go ahead and get Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels or whatever. So let's just say, I have a need, but maybe I can wait a year. Maybe I can address this elsewhere. I still think I would probably take the player, because when you look at Michael Penix Jr., the stats, he passed for almost 5,000 yards last season, 36 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and an 84.1 QBR. You can't deny that the talent's there. And it's a good sample size. He's played a long career, battled through several injuries, and also, went up against top-tier talent. He was runner-up in the Heisman, made it, deep into the playoffs, obviously had a good career with Huskies. And this is a Washington team that Obviously, they've got Roma Dunze. You know, they've got Dylan Johnson, I believe, is the running back. Like, they've got some guys. They've got some dudes. But he's not playing for the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's not playing for the Ohio State Buckeyes that are loaded with talent. Now, I'm not saying that they – well, look, this is a very good team that had a very good postseason run, as we know. But historically speaking, you know, you don't look at Washington as a quarterback factory. So, obviously, I'd have some concerns. You take the injuries into consideration, but if let's just say the Raiders, that's the team that's kind of coming to mind here. If I'm the Raiders, yeah, I'm going to take the player. Now, if I'm the Chicago Bears or if I'm the Washington Commanders and I have to have the quarterback, no, I'm going to pass because I have to have the right guy that can, you know, be the guy, especially that high in the draft.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good analysis, and I think we'd probably argue the same for Latu. I mean, he's the number 3 edge rusher on the Beast, and so overall, he's such a high level player. I think you have to take the risk. Similarly with, and I mean, I think even more so with like someone like Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's the 5th cornerback overall. I mean, he played at Alabama. Nick Saban coached him. He is a defensive stud. Look at Brian Branch coming out of there. I know he's a little bit different player, but either way, like those guys know how to play football. A foot fracture, it's not going to affect them at all. And so those are the decisions that as general managers and head coaches, you have to analyze and look at. And, you know, we talked about it a little bit during the combine time, but the team physician and the trainers, they are in the war room. They are at the table next to the general manager and the head coach. And there's sometimes the GM looks and says, should we take this guy? And the team doc gets input. So, I mean, this is no small thing. And like you talked about, the combine was originally invented as a medical analysis of players, and then it turned into what it is today. And so these are just as important as the numbers at bench press, as the numbers on the 40. And so these have to be taken into consideration with every single pick you make. I mean, these are careers and potential Super Bowls on the line with every single pick. So it's really interesting. It's really fascinating to see. And I think, Dustin, to your point with Michael Penix, part of it is age, but I also think maybe he was in a better position in Washington where they have a better training room. Maybe they had a better strength and conditioning coach, a little bit better resources to help prevent injuries because they're, you know, I'd argue a little bit higher level program than Indiana, although they're still Big Ten. And
Definitely.
so there's so many factors at play. And so at the end of the day, you have to take everything into consideration. But I agree with both of you. For both of these players in the right situation, it's totally worth the risk because they have proven post-injury that they can produce still and amongst some of the best.
So I guess we have to reshape this conversation, right? Like if let's just say this is Caleb Williams we're talking about that has gone through the same injuries. And you're saying, are we going to take him number 1 overall or a top 5 pick? Are we going to take him with a top 5 pick given the injuries that he's had? I think we all collectively on this podcast tonight would say, man, it would really depend on the situation, right? Like we would really probably pump the brakes and reconsider. And same with the edge position. I mean, that's a premium position. It's not like, you know, I don't know, a center who's got a better percentage of being a boom in the NFL, which we'll talk about that here in just a moment. I've got a really cool chart to show that David shared earlier. So we'll talk about that. But, you know, these are 2 high value positions that you cannot afford to miss on. And if you're talking, let's just say a top 10 pick, no, I mean, George talks about it here. It's all about the return on investment at this level, especially, with a first round pick. High first round.
Right. I mean, if you look at if you look at Barry's approach to drafting and just sort of what the goal is in your draft and with your picks, you don't want to be kind of hitting blooper singles. Sometimes you get lucky on a pick and you end up landing it and it's perfect, but you want to be hitting fast line drives and like putting an opportunity in play, getting a high return on investment. And so someone like Caleb Williams, who has, you know, a tragic knee history like that or an injury history, yeah, you're like, man, we could definitely take the risk, but there is a high chance of him being re-injured. And that's kind of like, if we get it, awesome. But was it worth the risk? And so I completely agree. It's a totally different conversation.
And what's the shelf life, right?
Yeah. I mean, because you could say, oh, well, Tom Brady tore his ACL, but he was already established in the league and he was already playing at a high level. He wasn't someone who was injury prone in college and then got drafted. And so that absolutely changes that decision-making process. And I think would play a big role for the Chicago Bears when they're picking their number 1 overall pick this year. And they may even, they have to pick someone now after trading for Fields, but it may not be Caleb Williams if he had the same history as Michael Penix Jr.
Well, no, exactly.
And David, we can look just back in history with the Cleveland Browns. You know, Nick Chubb had a pretty devastating injury in college.
Well, I dropped.
he was looked at as a first round, like pick before that injury. Like he's going to be one of those rare running backs that goes in the first round. And Cleveland got lucky and got him in the second round. And he turned out to be that back that everybody thought he could be in the National Football League. But you're right. Teams get a little shy. They get a little nervous. Like, man, this guy is, maybe one hit away from another re-injury and he's out the entire season. Right. So I agree. Depending on the needs of the football team at the time, like if it's like an extreme need, then maybe you take a chance on a guy and take a flyer and say, he's got generational talent. The injuries will come or go. We can't pass on a generational type of talent. But with the quarterback position, yeah, I mean that's your franchise right there. So that's even under a bigger microscope in
I
my
think
opinion.
there's certain positions where you can afford to say, like, look, we can make a move here on an injury-prone player based off of the positional value. I mean, quarterback's not one of them. Edge rusher is not one of them. Center, yes. Maybe interior offensive line, yes. Even a linebacker, you can take a risk there, just based off of their shelf life and the value that you get at that position. Now, in the first round, no. But if running back, for example, a good number one running back like Nick Chubb falls to you in the second round, you're going to do that deal all day, every day. But I can see why and how teams would be gun shy in the first round to execute that deal. Before we turn it over to strictly draft talk, David, this one's for you. Just going back to the rule changes, do you think that if we keep adding more rules for safety, do more injuries occur?
That's an interesting question and one that I haven't necessarily.
I mean, we don't have any like data to support this, obviously, but just
Sure.
your
I
opinion.
mean, I would say that maybe the injuries don't necessarily occur, but the types of injuries, I think that the nature of the injury changes. When you think about when we incorporate rules like whether it's the tuck rule or if we talk about, after Tom Brady tore his ACL, we're not allowed to tackle the quarterback in the legs anymore. So no longer do we see quarterbacks in the pocket getting ACL tears, but then they got head injuries, and then we started protecting their heads. And now we're getting maybe more rib injuries. And so I think maybe the injuries don't occur more, but the type of injury changes. I mean, just for example, when we're talking about injury prevention and trying to change the game for the better, out of that medical summit in February of this year, what they found is that they were actually so they look at it in games missed per player. And so there were 700 fewer games missed in 2023 than in 2022. That's a big number.
That's a big
even
number,
with Joe Burrow, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, and Justin Herbert all missing 36 games combined from these superstar quarterbacks. Overall, there were 700 less games missed last season than the year before. That tells me that whatever we're doing is actually working. We are improving the safety of our players and reducing the amount of games we're missing, despite adding more games to the season. And so it may actually be a beneficial thing that we're seeing rule changes leading to less injuries, but I do think the nature of the injury is changing. And so I think the hip drop tackle may have shown more hip injuries as well as ACL injuries and knee injuries as a result of the season. And now that's not going to happen. So I don't know what the injuries will be because you can't even tackle anybody anymore. So there's a fine balance between like creating rules for player safety, but then also still playing the game of football. So it's a great question. I think at least based on those numbers, what they're doing is working, but it's a small sample size and we need to look at the long-term game over the next decade or so.
Yeah. Real quick, before we change gears here, Dustin, why don't you tell our listeners about the Hartville Flea Market?
Guys, if you get a chance, check out the Hartville Flea Market. I did not get to go down there this last weekend, but the entire Dukes of Hazzard, Bo, Daisy, all of them were down there. Crazy the type of people they can get down there and get signed. Ric Flair is going to be down there in about a month. I mean, all these different people that get there. And so obviously they have a lot of Browns players, but Allie, this Hartville not only is the marketplace, it's the kitchen, it's the hardware store. It's kind of an experience to go down there and check out all the shops and all the things that Hartville has to offer. It's a pretty cool place. They are closed on Sundays and Wednesdays, but enjoy other times there out at the Hartville Flea Market down in Hartville, Ohio.
Yeah. All right. I want to share something that David shared with me earlier. This was posted by Adam Schefter over on Twitter. ESPN content producer Paul Hembo, he calculated the percentage of first-round picks that hit. So boom or bust, basically, based off of whether or not that player signed a second contract with the team that drafted them. And this is from so encompasses 20 drafts spanning from 2000 to 2019.
Nice.
So let's take a look at this. I've got it pulled up here. Sorry, David, I got you totally blocked out. But as you can see, if we take a look at offensive line, majority of those actually they're all here in the green. So you've got center at 92% hit rate, tackle at 59%, and then guard at 50%. So this should make you feel relatively optimistic, right? Over one, who the Browns have drafted, let's just say since 2019 when this was taken. At that point, we had Jedrick Wills, DeJuan Jones. I mean, there's a handful of guys that you could absolutely consider here. Luke Whippler. And then who they could potentially be drafting in this year's draft. We're going to talk about some tackles and interior offensive line here in just a little bit. But that should make you feel pretty optimistic based off of these percentages. Now, where it gets a little tricky, obviously, these are harder positions to kind of to analyze and to project how these players are going to be based off of their college production and as it translates to the National Football League. So linebacker, 48% hit rate. Quarterback, I actually am surprised that quarterback was this high. 46% hit rate. Blooper. 46% hit rate in the NFL since 2000 to 2019. So 26 hit, 30 misses, so 56 total. I thought that there would be more misses, if I'm being honest. But you have to keep in mind, too, these quarterbacks drafted that also signed a second contract. That does not mean all of them were starters necessarily. A lot of these could be backups and just drafted into the right position. Edge rusher, go ahead.
As I say, what it also tells me, the Browns have gotten a lot of flack that they can't pick a wide receiver in the draft. This shows, this graph right here, that it is the hardest position to draft. To hit on in the draft. I feel like the wide receiver is like me playing roulette. I can't hit my number half the time. So, or 60 to 70% of the time. So yeah, this is interesting that the Browns get so much flack, but this is interesting that clearly,
it really is.
Position. Yeah.
And I think another aspect on that is, let's just drop down to receiver here, because this has been such an area of need for the Browns over the past couple of years and continues to be one. One is just the number of drafted receivers. This is probably, I don't have the data in front of me, but if you go back and look, probably since 2000, you're going to get a lot of receivers. You can get value all the way into undrafted free agents. So there's always going to be more receivers than there are quarterbacks, and probably than there are offensive tackles. So it's an interesting thing to take a look at here. So let's just go through a couple more here. Defensive tackle, a little bit harder to rate, 24 hit, 36 miss, so 40% there. But let's highlight the receivers. So 21 hit, 56 miss on 77 total. So that's 27% hit rate. Obviously, that's not good, but it just goes to show, obviously there's several factors, right? You have to determine how many were drafted. There's a lot of things that go into this, but receiver is a really difficult position to evaluate. And we've seen really, 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 really good teams struggle to hit on receivers, especially outside of the first round. I think you can feel pretty comfortable, over 80%. Probably hit rate in terms of drafted first round receivers. But when you start getting into, rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 in terms of drafting a receiver, obviously there's going to be some more question marks. But we've seen some really good teams absolutely flop in terms of drafting a receiver. And the one that comes to mind is the New England Patriots. They had an absolute dynasty, but they have not been able to draft receivers in my lifetime, essentially.
Yeah. Ellie, I think that's, sorry. When it comes to receivers, and you say hit rate's probably the highest in the first round. I found a little bit that might actually dispute that, and it's interesting because that's what you think. You think we know who the best receivers are. You think of the draft this year. It's Rome Odunze, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. Not in that order. Marvin Harrison Jr. And then Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors. But this just came out. It's actually from Jesse Morris, who's one of those sports physicians on Twitter. But after Amon-Ra signed his extension this year, he looked at the highest paid wide receivers currently in the NFL and the round that they were drafted in. And so number 1 overall is Amon-Ra, and he was drafted in the 4th round. But we look at this list. Tyreek Hill, number 2, drafted in the 5th round. Devontae Adams, drafted in the 2nd round. Cooper Kupp, 3rd round. A.J. Brown, 2nd round. Devontae Smith, 1st round. DK, 2nd. Debo, 2nd. Michael Pittman Jr., 2nd. And Calvin Ridley, 1st. So overall, of the 10 highest paid wide receivers in the NFL right now, only 2 of them were drafted in the first round. 5 of
That's
them were
crazy.
drafted in the second round, 1 in the third, 1 in the fourth, 1 in the fifth. So not to be contrarian, but just very interesting and not what you'd expect, because you totally would think that we know who the best receivers are in college, so they're going to go early. But I mean, I can tell you as a Lions fan, drafting receivers in the first round does not work out very well.
Well, for what it's worth, and just to make us Browns fans feel so much better after seeing that Amon-Ra extension today, was the Browns actually passed on him to go ahead and just draft Anthony Schwartz. So that's really just great. That's cool.
Well, so Allie, so I'm a big Boise State fan. You look at someone like the Boise State, he goes and gets drafted to the Bills, and they release,
Khalil
and
Shakir,
look how,
yeah.
and Shakir is now really showing what I knew and saw, that he could catch anything thrown to him, and he's going to have an expanded role, and if he keeps playing the way I think he will, to David's point, he could have a good contract coming to him in the next couple of years based on the production that he's going to be asked to be put out, on the field, where some of these late round guys actually show up and put in the work that they were the kind of the diamonds in the rough, but that's good scouting, right? You find a guy that you think can elevate and play in that starting position, and then they end up being great hits in the draft because you got them at such value later on.
So let's talk about that. Oh, go ahead, David.
I was just gonna say, so if I were a betting man, and sometimes I might be, when I'm looking at wide receivers in the draft right now, certainly Marvin Harrison Jr. I would bet on. I think he's not going to be a bust. I think he's going to hit. But if we go based on the top 10 wide receivers, the top 10 paid wide receivers in the NFL right now, I'm looking at guys like Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell, Keon Coleman, Roman Wilson, and Ricky Pearsall, and Xavier Worthy to really be these guys who are going to be drafted in the second round most likely, but may have more of an opportunity at a career just based on numbers alone, based on the statistics right now. Those are the guys that are going to be likely drafted in the second round or late first round, and might have some pretty high value, at least based on what we are seeing in the NFL today.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think if we get off of Marvin Harrison Jr., now he is just in a tier of his own, as probably everybody that's ever watched him play knows. Now, if he was not in this draft class, Malik Neighbors is a clear and obvious number 1 receiver. And then Rome Odunze is probably following just that. But you can get a lot of value here. You mentioned a couple just right off the top there, David. But a couple that I'll throw back at you. You mentioned Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, Keon Coleman. But how about Xavier Legette, who could be available at number 54? Now you have to ask yourself, if you're the Browns, do you want to go receiver at number 54? Do you get somebody like a Kiran Omagadaje, the tackle out of Yale, or do you want to go with a Mike Hall Jr. out of Ohio State? Or do you just go best available? And if that is, I think Ladd McConkey is probably a stretch. That's not going to happen for Browns fans, but I could see a world where if some of these guys fall because quarterbacks are getting drafted high, there is a very real situation, a very real possibility that Andrew Berry has the capital to go up and get somebody like a Ladd McConkey, which, is interesting. Who else? There was a couple others that I wanted to mention here. Xavier Worthy intrigues me. Oh, Troy Franklin out of Oregon, Xavier Legette, Lake Washington. There's a lot of value here. So it is promising when we look at those receiver stats and the value you can get outside of the first round. I think this is a really good draft class for that, where if you've got a receiver need, which the Browns clearly do, you've got some guys that you can pick from that, yes, they may not be Amari Cooper right off the bat, but over the course of the next few years, paired with the young talent that they do have, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, if he can develop what that's going to look like, if you can get somebody like a Taj Washington, you feel pretty good about that. There's some guys here. So we'll talk about that in just a moment, but I want to go back and, we talk about draft misses, right? And Anthony Schwartz. Let's talk a little bit about who maybe we collectively had as, who we were wrong about, whether that's for better or for worse. And I'll start. Mine was, I thought Patrick Mahomes was going to be a bust. Clearly that didn't happen. But when you're going through the draft process, and you're evaluating them, and you're reading all these things, I'm like, yeah, no, he's not it. He's too loose with the ball. It's not going to happen. Obviously, I was dead wrong on that one. Dustin, who was your, who were you just totally, totally wrong about? Whether it's for the better or for the worse? You thought they were either going to be way better or they've been way worse than you thought they'd be?
Well, I thought Wilson with BYU. I thought he
Oh,
was going to
mhm.
be a good quarterback, right? And so, he gets thrown into the Jets, and then now he's going to Denver. I think that's
Yeah,
hysterical. Now
it is.
he's playing for the Denver Broncos. That was mine. I thought he was going to be good. So that's the one in recent time that I can think of that I was pretty like he's going to be one of those that kind of elevates. Um, and he just wasn't. He just didn't materialize and become
Yeah.
that player that I thought he was going to be.
David, what do you got? Who are you totally
So I
wrong
got
about?
two that come to mind, just for me, especially kind of this is relevant, I think, especially to this podcast. One, for the division that we're discussing, and two, for the positions we just talked about. John Ross from the Bengals, and then a little bit further back for the Browns. Oh my gosh, I just lost his name. We are looking at Corey Coleman, two wide receivers that I thought in college were phenomenal athletes and were really going to come in first round picks and just kind of take the league by storm, and they disappear after a season and never to be heard from again. And it just goes to show, like we said, wide receiver is so hard to judge talent, and even these big time first round picks, and just huge bust, and it's humbling.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I will say this: I was all in on Johnny Manziel based on
Yeah.
what he did, what he did at in college, and he kind of fit that move around in the pocket, be very elaborative. What was happening in the NFL at that time, because you had people like Russell Wilson that were able to do those types of things, and I thought he was going to come in and be that kind of spark plug that kind of like would give defenses fits. I mean, I really thought that. And so, I mean, if, in full transparency, I was big on Johnny, and early on it looked like he would be okay, and then obviously that just didn't happen. So that would be another one that I thought I was. I mean, I bought a Johnny Manziel jersey. I was all in. I
You
was
know
in
another
all
one?
in.
You know another one that I have that I'm embarrassed to say is I thought Josh Rosen was going to be so good for the Cardinals. I did. I'm like, he is Aaron Rodgers. He is the next thing. Dead wrong there. Former Cleveland Browns
Yeah.
legend Josh Rosen, that is. Guys, if you don't have stadium mustard, David, sorry again. You're just in a bad spot. If you don't have stadium mustard in your kitchen this season, you're doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste, the iconic taste, beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium mustard is the smooth brown mustard, rich in both taste and tradition, and it's loved by millions. Head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. Real quick. Hang on.
Allie, can I give some breaking news?
Oh, yes, of course.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I just confirmed. So, ones that are watching, legendary Browns running back Webster Slaughter, we're talking about wide receivers, is going to join the podcast next Wednesday. So, there's some breaking news right within that. He just texted me and confirmed. So, we're going to have Webster Slaughter, the legendary Browns wide receiver, on next week.
While that is awesome, and we cannot wait to have him, you made my heart stop with breaking news the night before draft night. Who's going where? Who's doing what? Who traded up to
Herbert
number
just
one?
got traded to the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, there's your break.
Oh man, you can't do that to me. But that's very exciting. We're excited to have him. I want to talk about some draft day predictions or draft weekend predictions, because I think that there's some real things that could happen this year that maybe we haven't seen before. So I'll kick it off. My first one, and this is very specific. You guys don't have to get this specific, but I have a feeling that Brandon Ayuk gets traded tomorrow night in a package. I don't know, maybe I don't even want to put that one out there because that hurts Browns fans. But there's a couple of situations that Brandon Ayuk gets traded. I know that he's been speculated to the Steelers. There's a couple here and there teams that he'd be a good fit for. So maybe they package him some picks and a team moves up. So I'm speculating. My prediction is Brandon Ayuk gets traded tomorrow night.
Do you think so? Does Debo become their number one? Or are they going to draft somebody? Or are they looking to get someone in return?
I guess it depends. Now, if he
Yeah.
goes to Pittsburgh, which was the one I was going to say, but I didn't say,
Mhm.
I think they'll probably just get that pick because Pittsburgh drafts what is it I forget what their first round pick is this year, but they send Ayuk to
20,
Pittsburgh.
number 20.
Okay, so I would say that they would draft a receiver in that slot.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Because Debo's great, but they still need a wide receiver.
They've got
He's
Debo, they've
that
got
utility
Jennings.
player.
Yeah, they would need somebody else. But I know he kind of wants out of there. That's kind of the writing on the wall, but I could see a world where that happens.
Yeah.
All right, Dustin, you're up.
All right,
What's your prediction? Oh, sorry, David.
my prediction for the draft or Browns related to the draft. Can it be either?
It doesn't matter. Just
Anything.
a draft weekend prediction.
Yeah. So then I'm going to throw it around the room here. We're going to go full circle here.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the Browns pick. What I think is going to be not surprise, but what I'm going to put out there is that the Browns are going to take an offensive lineman with their first pick in the draft. And I feel like I'm not going to say it's a lock, but I feel it's almost like
All
a
right.
sure
Who do you
lock.
think they draft then? Who is it? Who's your
I
lineman?
don't know. I'd have to.
No, you say you're dead set that they're going to take
Well,
they're going to take someone.
I have to go look at the offensive lineman. But go around and then I'll tell you who I think they may pick.
It's Kieran Magadaje. That's who they're going to take if that's the case.
Okay.
Or maybe Blake Fisher. I could see a world where that happens.
That's
Blake
true.
Fisher,
Yeah.
Kieran Magadaje. No, I agree with you. I think that they do draft an offensive lineman with number 54 overall. If it's not like a supreme talent that fell, like I could absolutely see them taking an offensive lineman number 54 just because of the value, and obviously it's a need.
I think it's a great segue. Speaking of Blake Fisher, my prediction is that Blake Fisher is going to go in the second round, and he is going to end up being an all-pro offensive tackle in the NFL. Fun fact here with Blake Fisher. As a freshman, he won the starting job for left tackle over All-American Joe Alt and became the first true freshman ever to start – not ever – first true freshman to start a season opener in 15 years for Notre Dame. And the reason I bring that up, the relevance there, I mean, think about the offensive lineman that Notre Dame has produced over the last couple of decades. I mean, you can go from the Martin brothers, one of them, Zach being in Dallas, to a whole other slew of offensive linemen as well as tight ends. And so the guys up front, they know how to develop them at Notre Dame. And so Blake Fisher proved as a true freshman that he had what it took to be a starter. And I think on the Beast, they've got him at 10 overall, which puts him like third round. I think that, he proved his worth and that he can play on either side of the ball and that he will be, if not a second round pick, he will be a steal in the third round, but overall long-term, he's going to be an all-pro tackle sometime in the NFL.
So Dane Brugler says, overall, Fisher is a big, athletic, finesse blocker who flashes power but falls off too many blocks and needs to introduce more control to his playstyle before he's ready for NFL competition. He's a developmental prospect reminiscent of Nicholas Petit-Frere. Okay, we like that. You know what? David, if the Browns were to be able to get somebody like Blake Fisher, which I think would be sorry, I just sent him out of here and the cat comes straight into you.
Here he is.
If the Browns were able to get somebody like Blake Fisher, it's kind of the perfect marriage, if you will, because he doesn't have to start right away. You've got Jack Conklin, you've got DeJuan Jones, you've got Jedrick Wills, you've got some guys. So obviously he could kind of sit, relax, see how it goes, develop a little bit, and then get the start. So I like it. And then Kieran Magadaje, who I brought up, Dane Brugler says, and this is the prospect out of BL, everybody, but he's a raw prospect who needs technical strength and work before he sees NFL reps, but his physical ingredients and competitive drive are foundational elements that coaches want to develop. So he projects as a backup left tackle as a rookie who has all the tools to gradually develop into an NFL star. So I like that. I like that pick. So I agree with all of you. David, I agree that he could potentially become, a stud in the NFL. But Dustin, I agree. Number 54 is totally open to offensive line.
And I don't think the Browns take a wide receiver till the fifth round.
That's fair.
Till the fifth round.
Okay. So what do you think they do if they kind of pass there? This is the first year where we do have a second round pick. Obviously, third round's a lot of value. If we do pass on receiver, which is possible, I can see a world where that happens. What positions do they prioritize over that?
I think you go offensive line. Then of course we have a third round. I don't believe we have any fourth round picks.
Correct.
I think you then address maybe tight end in the third round. Go after a tight end. I do think that's kind of a glaring weakness for the Browns. I mean, other than Njoku, there's quite a bit of drop off there. So I think you could go for a tight end at 3. And then you can't have enough corners. I think you could draft another corner in the 5th round. And I think we have 2 picks in the 5th, if I'm correct. So maybe you can get some value there, get a linebacker, or either order linebacker, cornerback, in that 5th round. And then the 5th, 6, you get a wide receiver. And then 7, this might sound crazy, but maybe they go with 2 wide receivers. just because
I
they
don't
can
think that's
kind of,
crazy. It's an area of
yeah,
need. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, go with two wide receivers. Um, just a little short story. Kevin Stefanski was in studio this week um, at my at Odyssey, and he
Great
was
job.
talking about how they're actually going to, with the kickoff, every team is kind of in a flux trying to figure out how this is going to take place on Sundays. He goes, even the one that's in, you know, uh, the arena leagues and all that they play is not the same version of what the NFL is going to put on the field. And he said this game is going to dramatically change, and speed is going to be of the essence on kickoffs. And he said for kickers, hang time means nothing now. Hang time
Mhm.
means nothing on these kickoffs. So, maybe they go for looking for speed at the end of the draft or someone like that, because I'm sorry, but if I am playing the Dolphins now with this new kickoff return, I don't want to play a team like the Dolphins that has Tyreek Hill back there, that if he gets by one guy, he's gone, like because of this new kickoff rule. So I think it's going to be very interesting what these guys um, do at the end.
Yeah,
You have to
George
catch the
says
ball.
you've got to catch the ball, but Dustin, that's true. A couple others here. Another prediction I have is 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10, and one of those being kind of a bullet point to that is J.J. McCarthy as the third quarterback off the board. So I've got Caleb Williams, Jane Daniels, and then I've got J.J. going as the third quarterback. So that's my prediction that 4 go in the top 10, which is great, for the other positions to be able to fall a little bit. Gives the Browns maybe a little value if they do want to go up and do some business. So that's my prediction. 4 in the top 10. What do you guys think?
Yes, but can I throw a curveball at you?
I love a
And we've
curveball.
seen, well, and let's go back to the Baker Mayfield draft where you had so many great quarterbacks, and any of them, we'll call it the top four, could have went number one overall, right?
Josh Rosen,
Could
my
you,
guy.
right? So Allie, could you see a wow moment on draft day when the Bears go to turn their pick in that it's not Caleb Williams? I mean, could you
No,
see? You
As
don't
long
no.
think
as it's
so?
not JJ.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some smoke saying like, "Oh, the Bears could take JJ number 1." I don't see it. Like I don't see it. I really don't. And look, I think that
But
there's a lot of
but
reasons
but
to
I didn't see.
dislike.
I didn't see us taking Baker Mayfield number one though either. Like, I
Well,
mean, I didn't see
that
that.
was a different draft though. There was
Yeah.
no clear Josh Allen wasn't who Josh Allen is now, right? Lamar Jackson in college wasn't the Lamar Jackson that he is in the NFL. There really was no clear and obvious number 1 choice. I think a lot of people would have said that was Sam Darnold. Now, 2018 was kind of weird in that way that there was a lot of
Mhm.
really good quarterbacks. It was hard to say like the guy that you could
Right.
it consensus. Like, I mean, go back a couple of years ago. Actually, when we were in Cleveland, Dustin, it was Trevor Lawrence. He was the clear and
Mhm.
obvious number 1 overall pick. And then there was Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trey Lance. You're gonna have some busts here.
That ended
And
up
that's
being like a really.
yeah, it's bad. So I think this may be similar, but I don't see a world where the Bears don't take Caleb Williams. And look, I think there's a lot of reasons actually to not like Caleb Williams. I mean, I've got some concerns. If I was a Bears fan, I would probably have a couple of concerns just on his loose style of play. And like there are some real things there, but I think when you compare him to like Drake May, it's obvious. You're gonna take the talent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree, but I think this is a weak quarterback class. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the prevailing thought across all the draft boards, and I by no means am an expert, but I just they don't look that strong to me. It reminds me of almost like 2015, where Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Garrett Grayson, Bryce Petty. I don't love any of them, and I'm not saying that just because I'm not a USC fan, I'm not a Michigan fan. I mean, removing my loyalties, I'm not impressed by any of them. They're not. I don't see any of them as being very tough. I think they are very wild, and they are very prone to
Yes.
ditching the box early, and they are turnover prone. And I
Yeah.
just, even with Jaden Daniels putting up these crazy numbers this past season, I don't see any of them having a fruitful NFL career. And maybe that's one of my bold predictions, is that the top 5 quarterbacks taken in this draft don't play more than 3 years from now. But I don't see it. I don't.
Mhm. I
Well,
think that's fair.
and I think there's too much hype around these quarterbacks. They've put so much hype around this class of quarterbacks. And I mean, I'm on record. I feel this way. I don't. I think Caleb's going to be a bust. And and I
A
and
lot of
I
people
and I
do,
feel
yeah.
and I feel confident about that, and I just and nothing against the player. I just don't think he has the mental toughness for the National Football League, and I can clearly feel confident about that. I don't think that's going to translate to the NFL because it's going to be tough. And I just think I don't know. I always see these quarterbacks that we don't see out of nowhere. All of a sudden, race up the draft boards, and everybody's like, "Well, yeah, he was. That was obvious. He was built like a prototype." And that's why I was full on Josh Allen for the Cleveland Browns. I was like,
Yeah.
"He's big, he's thick, he's tall, he plays in the elements and the blizzards. Like he's built for Cleveland. Like, what are we doing
Mhm.
here? Let's Dorsey go get Josh Allen. Like that's your that's your quarterback that fits the mold." And then they took Baker Mayfield. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like that guy plays down in the South and he's not used to cold weather. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, right? Um, so it'll be interesting to see how these quarterbacks come around. But
I mean,
I think that I think we're going to miss on half of these quarterbacks in the first round. Half
let's
of
go
them. I'm
back
not.
and look. You can go back and look at historically good quarterback drafts, 2018 being one of them. Baker Mayfield is on his fourth team now. Josh Allen was the clear and obvious winner, drafted where he was drafted. Lamar Jackson, obviously MVP. He fell to the right situation. But Sam Darnold on his third or fourth team. Josh Rosen is not in the league. I mean, these are
Yeah.
historically good draft classes. And then we go to 2021. Yes, you have Trevor Lawrence, who's been good. He's been a good quarterback. He's been fine. He's not kind of lived up to the expectation of who he was as a prospect. And then you've got Trey
Sure.
Lance. Last week we listed him as one of the biggest busts in NFL history. So that's something. Justin
Right.
Fields,
Mhm.
he's on his second team. Now, out of all of the other quarterbacks, I think he's probably the most talented, which is in a really bad and weird situation. So we'll see. Jury's still out on Justin Fields. Mac Jones, he's on his second team. So these historically good
Zach
quarterback
Wilson.
drafts, Zach Wilson being the other one. Oh my God, I don't
Yeah.
know how I forgot him. Yeah, historically good draft classes are historically good for the draft, not historically good for these
Ah,
players' careers. So
yeah.
I like that.
it does not
That's nice.
translate. Thank you. Just do what I do. So no, it does not translate. And I would imagine because this is a historically good draft class, if we were to have the same conversation in 2 to 3 years from now, at least three or four of these guys are either going to be on separate teams or they're going to be out of the league. So you hate to say that, but it's kind of just the truth. It's the
Well, I mean,
reality.
Business.
So
your stats showed it 46% or 43%
yeah,
hit on the quarterback. So more than half don't make it in the National Football League to a second contract.
yeah.
I mean, that's the true
It's
fact.
just the truth. It is. Dustin, before we wrap up, tell our listeners about the Barley House. Oh, and this one gets
Yeah.
all of our faces out of here. Sorry, David. It's not just you this time.
Yeah, so guys, Barley House down on downtown Cleveland, right? Barley House and the Lost nightclub right next door. By the way, guys, if you're going to the draft, I have a huge, and I mean a huge swag bag of stuff to give away from the Barley House that will be given away. A good few $100s in prizes that will be given away down at the Barley House and the party that will be at Friday night with our big friend and larger than life Big Dog Willie. Friday night, the party will be going down in Detroit. So that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm telling you, it's a good time to go down there to the Barley House if you're ever in downtown Cleveland for lunch or dinner, or if you want to go out on a Friday or Saturday night to enjoy just the festivities in downtown Cleveland.
Yep, there you go. There you have it. This was a lot of fun. Tomorrow night is the night. So we'll know if anything crazy happens. You'll know. We'll have it all out on Facebook. We'll have it on Twitter. You'll see it.
We'll
So
be going live. We'll be going live a lot, guys. Thursday, Friday, and of course Saturday, where you get those really gym of players that come up on that Saturday that end up, filling out your roster for the season.
it's gonna be a lot of fun. So stick around, stay tuned. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, Browns fans, go Browns.
Go Browns.
Browns.